Beautiful. Okay, welcome everybody. We are live on the Vrystaat Arts Festival website for the Q&A for AVU. Now, anybody who's watching, I suggest you also share it as a Facebook live watch party. I'm just doing that as we speak so that my friends can also see it. There we go, sharing it. Oops, I'm sharing it from the wrong angle here. Give me 5 seconds while I figure this out. What we do is these Q&As are to help us have conversations about the work that we're streaming live at the moment on South African Theatre on Demand, which is the platform that we've partnered with for this, what we call the Snelstroom Sluipkyk, which is a test run. Toets, what is it? The toetsloopie. Is the Snelstroom state. Hey, there's Teddy. Welcome in Facebook Live world, Teddy. I'm just trying to figure out how to share the watch party so that everybody on my timeline can also join in, because Isabel will be taking questions from Facebook, from the Facebook live comments. And also, if you get it on your own particular Facebook page, please put the questions in the chat space, because we all have friends that are interested in seeing what's happening and what we are doing. So as I'm trying to figure this out, I'm going to keep talking and asking questions as well. What we're doing tonight is we have some fabulous guests who were intimately involved in the making of AVU, which premiered at the Vrystaat Arts Festival. Is it 2017, if I'm correct?
2016.
2016 already. Oh, that's incredible. And what we are doing is we are now lucky enough to have a video editing of this work that we are streaming on South African Theatre on Demand. And I said this is part of what we call Stream 2. We have 5, maybe 6 streams coming up on work that people have created here in Bloemfontein. And there we go. My watch party has started. Now I can focus just on asking questions. And there we go. Now, we have guests from all around South Africa, but also internationally. So I think Michelle Hoffman is in her pajamas somewhere in the East, unwilling to show us her morning face. So we're just going to imagine her with her wild hair. She just woke up. It's something like 2 a.m. So just pretend Michelle Hoffman with wild hair, 2 a.m. in the morning, trying to cope with life. Over there in her room, trying to also connect to us here in South Africa, because she has to go through loops and jumps and squirrels to get here. And then we have Kabetswe here as well. Thank you. Luckily, it's not kind of 2 a.m. in the morning. It's South African time. It's gin and tonic time, so we're all coping. And then we have Eric. Eric, welcome as well. From you now in the north, in the northern parts. There's beautiful. And then we have Mark Dobson as well, who helped with was intimately and intricately involved. So this is, as I said, this is an open meeting, so anybody on Facebook can ask questions, and people in this Zoom meeting can also ask questions. Oh, here we go. Teddy B has just appeared again. He disappeared again from the internet, but Teddy was also involved in this project. So he's in and out of Zoom. A lot of our little Zoom meetings, you kind of in and out, and you just, when you connect, you ask a quick question, and then as soon as you disconnect, we'll answer it. So my first question, and I've just watched it again. I saw it live in 2016, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite pieces at the Vrystaat Arts Festival.
Connection is so terrible.
Teddy, we know your connection is terrible. That's okay if you leave your video off, but chat, can you hear us? Oh, he can't hear us at the moment, but sometime or other he'll be able to hear us. what we will do is,
Okay,
yeah,
I can hear you guys.
you can hear us now? Excellent. So anybody, if you've got questions, post them on Facebook for us, and we can ask them as well. My first question, and this is, I thought, you know, as I watched it and I reflected on what I saw at the time as well in the theatre. It was in the Skyna, the Rep Theatre, I think. My question now around the Black Lives Matters movement in particular, we have to go there straight away, is around representation. So it's interesting for me how we have particular writers from a particular background, an Afrikaner background, writing work that is also then presented by writers who are from, are you Sesotho Kebetswa? Is that your background?
I'm Tswana.
Tswana. And for me, it was just fascinating and extraordinary and quite beautiful to watch the kind of the mixture between agency of the actor and the kind of the words written by the director. And I'm going to open it up to anybody here to kind of comment on. But the idea of representation is very, very pertinent still, you know, has been for a long time, but particularly now, about who gets represented by whom, who has the right to write about whom, and then in the theatre world, what kind of agency do you think the actors have in relation to what is written for them? Do they shift it? Do they change it? Is there a kind of relationship that happens between the actor, the director, and the writer, which shifts the narrative somehow? Because this idea of who's allowed to write, which is something that, you know, that keeps popping up all the time. Who's allowed to write about whom and about what is something that, you know, we're having an endless debate about these days. So I'm going to open it up to any of you to start commenting on before I start picking on you individually. So if you don't jump in first, you're going to get to ask the question anyway, or answer the question anyway.
Who wants to go first?
I'll just make a comment. I'll make a comment.
Go, Michelle. Go make a comment.
So just to be clear, like, we are still learning about systemic racism, and we're still finding, we're still careful, and we're learning. So that's the point. The first thing I want to say is, before AVU was even AVU, I had meetings with Kia Betswe, because the idea was we wanted to do a show together from the beginning, before there was any content or anything. And the only comment she gave me was, I want to sweat on stage. And we took it from there. So I don't know if you want to jump in here right now.
It's funny because when you say, I did say I want to sweat on stage, I don't remember if you asked this question or if I offered it as well, was that I want to play a role which I don't think I'll be able to play, or I will be allowed to play if I was, I would be allowed to play if I just, speaking about the Renaissance eras, basically, I wanted something like that, to play a character that I don't think would be allowed as a Black actress. I remember also saying something like that. We took it all from there. And yes.
I remember that, because then I was in consultations with Ilna at the time, because I knew I needed a writer. And I was also busy with my master's at the time, which was also reading up on a lot of Afrikaans history. And our conversations happened, and Ilna called me one day saying, I have a great idea. Imagine a one-woman show. We can put all of this in there for Nini and really give her that opportunity to show off. Because that's what was unfair at the time was, and I might get shot for this, but that's fine. There were not opportunities available for Nini. End of story. She never got the opportunity to really show off everything she's capable of, and we wanted to give her that opportunity.
Yeah. I still remember that the whole process started with a photo shoot, which is completely, but we've always done things quite backwards. Because we started with the photo shoot doing this odd thing, and there was a complete works of Shakespeare book that we had used in the photo shoot, and we were just starting to put visuals together. And usually we start that way. We start visually, and then from there we go, and then magically there's a product and a show at the end of the day. And I still remember we were busy shooting outside, and I still put Nini in a full-length bodysuit made from mesh. And it's, yeah, and you almost suffocated as well. And we had that massive Shakespeare book that Erik had given me for my birthday one year, because it all started around Shakespeare. Yeah, I remember. Anyway, okay.
So Nini,
it's funny to hear all of this coming back.
Yeah.
So Nini, I've got a question for you in terms of how you represented yourself in this space, because you're talking about the fact that that at the time you felt that there maybe were limited roles, or there's kind of this imposed limitation, which is not a real limitation. It's always an imposed limitation by others onto who can do what or who can't do what. But at the time, you felt there was kind of a lack of what is the word? A lack of characterization, or a lack of kind of characters that you could particularly explore in theatre in South Africa. Correct me if I'm wrong. And has that changed, or did AVU help you engage yourself in another kind of way that you could represent and play in a space that you thought was not possible previously?
Well, around that time, I was a couple of years out of varsity, I think. And the Vrystaat Festival was still seen, I don't know about now, but it was still seen as a sort of very Afrikaans festival, right? So I barely saw Black representation there. So you sort of had an idea about the Vrystaat, but I guess being in that space made me really see what we're contributing to that festival. So yeah, I don't know what else to say, but yeah.
No, yeah. Thank you for that. Now, and Erik, as kind of somebody who embodies in part in AVU kind of a traditional conservative Afrikaner, how did you shift from kind of your upbringing in terms of where you come from, and kind of how you embodied this stereotype in a sense? Were you comfortable in that at times, or were you uncomfortable, or did you exaggerate or create a stereotype that you thought embodied a particular Afrikaner model?
So, yeah, first of all, it was quite difficult. I remember at a time, Michelle and I, we were sitting on steps. I can't remember where. And I just remember Michelle asking me, like, if I'll grow my beard out and if I'll be this Afrikaner dude. And I'm just like, okay, yes. I don't know what I'm saying yes to, but yes. And I was just believing in this whole, yeah, she started off telling about Nini and how she really just wants to do this show for her, and I was like, yes, let's do this. We must do whatever we can and just really put the show together. And for me, it was kind of like all or nothing. So I remember when Michelle made the suggestion that I should start off half naked on stage, and I was just like, okay, if it's good for the show, I'll do it. And I think that was just a lot of my approach towards the show is, if it's good for the show, if it's good for what we're trying to achieve, I'll do it. So I think that's kind of where I started mining already. parts of my upbringing, remembering, what is the essence of Afrikaans. And it was just so beautiful the way that we could all contribute towards the show, that I could bring some of these, parts of history, parts of myself, because I remember at that time, Michelle and we were in quite deep conversations about history and Emily Hobhouse, and it was part of Michelle's study. So for me, it was just great being able to share some of what I grew up with. As you said, Ricardo, it's part of my upbringing. So it was just great fun. But to just get back to the question, for me, it was really, at times I felt like, is like my own people going to hate me because I am really like depicting this actual, it's some of the scenes were so raw, and I never thought I would have to be a racist on stage, and it was so challenging at times because Nini knows how much I just love and care about her as a person. So for me to like totally change who I am and just see her as this, it wasn't nice, but luckily you can section off parts of yourself in acting, of course. So it wasn't great, and there's a lot of people who hate me because of it, but it's okay.
People get triggered a lot.
I mean, it raises a really interesting question. Michelle, maybe you can start talking about this question. In terms of white privilege and white supremacy that is often invisible to white people like ourselves, because we don't experience how other people live life, and then it's kind of a shock when things like the Black Lives Matter movement occurs, and you realize that white people themselves have to take control of looking at the racism within our own communities, within white privilege and white supremacist notions of white supremacy that still infiltrates many of our kind of community narratives, consciously or unconsciously. How do you do that without becoming self-indulgent and without the focus not going away from what matters, which is people suffering because of racism, predominantly around the world through racism towards Black and brown people? How do you create a narrative where white people can talk about it without white people becoming the focus again and taking the focus away from the real issues?
Wow. It's really difficult to answer questions like that. We can talk about the approach to AVU, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I meant in the context of AVU and how you... Not to solve the problems of the universe now, but...
Yeah. First, I'll say we were terrified to do AVU in the beginning. I remember one of the first table readings, Yerak looked up with his big eyes saying, "Guys, we're going to win awards, and also I'm afraid." And that's when we knew we're doing something special. First, I think as a white person, the fear does fall away when you realize that you need to call out your people on their stuff. And if you can't be blind to it, comes a point when you need to open your mouth about it. Another thing was the linking of the concept, and why that was important is AVU keeps trying to find her narrative in every scene. She keeps trying to sympathize, and at the same time, she's trying to place a Black narrative in the same context. And I think that is more than fair and justified to have happened. So there are a lot of people that did call us out on the content, and there's a lot of people that still do. There's a lot of people that loved it. I don't know why, but all I learned as a child was van lekker lag kom lekker huil. So that's the concept that we had going with the roller coaster narrative of, that's how Era coined it the one day, which was beautiful. As soon as the audience is captivated by a very serious moment and we are afraid people are going to walk out of our theater, we're going to make them laugh. And then we'll build it back up again. And in that way, we're adding a Brecht technique where, you know, when I laugh, you cry. Yeah. When you cry, I'm laughing. And that's the only way we could have done it in Bloemfontein, which was terrifying. I don't know if that answers any question.
So Michelle, I was actually thinking about this while I was watching it, and it's interesting that you said sympathy, because something that I thought about, because you know it's 2020 and it's very retrospective now because it's 2016 when this took place, and then when you watch it, there are so many parallels with what's happening in the world now, and you're like, oh yay, it's still relevant. But this show was very much a show of firsts. You know, it was Eric's first time in a professional show. It was Nini's first one-woman show. It was Michelle's first show that she directed. And I think, you know, when you start directing something, you can very easily make it about yourself. And that's the great thing about Michelle Kim Hoffman, because she's got so much empathy for people, and she always wants to learn. And she doesn't want to make it about herself. She tries to elevate everyone around her and uplift people as much as she can. And yeah, I think that's why I'm obsessed with you, you know, for the past 10 years already, and everything you do.
Mark,
you know,
marry me.
I mean, nothing would make my mother happier.
Mine too.
Yeah.
I'm doing kind of digital magic here, and we lost our gorgeous Teddy, but I called Teddy in, and Teddy is now live here. Okay. He's going to ask a live question.
Oh, okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, cool. My question was, did playing in front of different crowds influence certain emphasis in the script or some of the topics in the script?
So I'll just repeat that, Teddy, to make sure I've got it, everybody heard it. So you're saying if they played if you played in different crowds, did it influence how they emphasize particular topics?
Okay. Some of the topics, because watching AVU has a lot of content and subject matter in it, and it applies to different crowds. It's really emotionally taxing, if I may say. How does that influence their person?
Okay, thank you, Teddy.
Thank you.
It's open to the floor.
I think Nini and Erik will have the best experience with it.
Did someone maybe want to repeat it? Okay, if I can jump in and maybe my answer will give you context, Nini.
Okay.
Let's try that. So I remember after Teddy also jumped in, because at the Vrystaat Arts Festival, we had a very specific crowd. You know, it was your festival goer, it was your Bloemfonteiner. So, you know, it was a very specific crowd, and also most of our families, Dankie Ma. So, you know, it was almost a way different crowd from what we experienced, say, for instance, later at Pacos, or even in Cape Town when we toured. So if I understand Teddy's question correctly, I remember how the Afrikaans people felt very sympathized from their point of view, from their perspective. They felt like AVU was sympathizing with them. And, you know, kind of saying like, oh, it's okay that you're, because I think as humans, we tend to cling to those pieces that make sense and we add value to. And then they kind of just glance over the fact that AVU had this terrible, terrible, terrible childhood and, you know, this terrible life. And then I don't know what was their reactions towards you, Nini, But to me, as the Afrikaans, quote unquote Afrikaner in the show, I'm like, literally, I remember people just saying, but AVU really sympathizes with the Afrikaner. And even in Cape Town, I remember a journalist also mentioning to me that was how he perceived it. That it was very sympathetic towards the Afrikaner, kind of saying like, for those of you who didn't know what was happening, it's okay, obviously, but is it really? That's the thing is, how many people did really know what was going on? How many people were just turning a blind eye, or just trying to think, no, but my life is more important? And that's the thing is, how many of the Afrikaners then thought like, oh no, AVU is actually just about this black woman apologizing to white people. But I don't think they actually sometimes clicked what the real narrative was, because of those, like just their eyes being blinded by their perspective almost. So yeah, that's my 10 cents.
Nina, your kind of thoughts on that?
Honestly, I didn't hear much from the Afrikaans audience. I just heard, I would just hear good performance, like a performance. Nothing in detail. All I can say is as the actor part, I focused more on AVU's story, not that I didn't focus on the Afrikaans perspective, but I focused a lot on her story. And I think a lot of people, maybe with certain scenes, like the poem scenes and hearing her stories, maybe they didn't speak, I don't know how to put it. I think we felt a little bit of sympathy for her as well in her story. So for me, I think the focus was more feeling sorry for her than they didn't speak to me. The audience didn't speak to me per se about the Afrikaans experience. It was more about sympathy for AVU, what I heard from the viewers.
As you guys have been speaking, I actually recalled a memory. Michelle and I were sitting and we were negotiating a tour to Johannesburg with a theatre owner there. And talking about audiences, they were reluctant, and we ended up not touring the show to Johannesburg because they were afraid of alienating their Afrikaans-going community that came to the theatre. And the interesting thing, but I'll always say this, is that if you're doing experimental work, Bloemfontein's actually a great place to do it, because even if the audience hates it, they don't walk out of the theatre. They're going to get their money's worth, which is great. They're not going to leave. They paid 50 Rand. They're sitting there, even if it's shit, they're going to sit through it. And then afterwards they will voice their anger or whatever. But that's the great thing. So everywhere else people will walk out. But here an audience gives you an opportunity. And I think everyone who's watched AVU, the character and, the actress and the actors, they win you. That was a horrible way of speaking.
No, that was good.
That's the new logo. They win you.
They win you over.
Because I must say, for me also, the audiences who come to the festival in Bloemfontein are extraordinary because they're willing to give you a go. You can do the most experimental work and people will go and see it and support you because it is new and it's interesting and it's happening. So it's maybe because people are not as saturated by things all the time that people here really kind of give. If you put energy into it, they really support you. But Nina, I've got a question for you. There's a few other questions I've got here. But do you think playing this role opened up? I think I mentioned it a little bit before, but I'm not sure if I understood fully your answer. Did this role open up other roles for you, or other ways that you could perform in a non-traditional settings or non-traditional roles that usually you kind of were forced into kind of performing in a sense because of race. Did this open up other opportunities for you that wasn't allowed you to be an actor that wasn't racially specific?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. I think so. I think the more people get to see other people in different types of role, you can see that, oh, actually, I'm doing an actor's job, which is to portray all these different type of characters. I absolutely think that it opened up and people could see me in a different way as well. Absolutely. Because, oh, okay, I'm not going to mention that part. I'll just keep quiet. But yes, I'll just say yes.
Okay. Now, I mean, one of the other strong thematics is kind of sexual abuse and you know, gender abuse in kind of the most horrific ways. And also, it's a very complex way. It's not kind of male female either. It's across genders as well. So there's this kind of interesting intersections that happen around the different forms of discrimination. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that as well, you know, Nini or Michelle, because do you think that narrative created more of a link for people? Are they different? Because it seems to be there's many kind of narratives and many layers to this, and in some layers people connect, and some layers people disconnect. There's crossovers across race, across gender, across sexuality. How did you play with that, or kind of how did you kind of weave all these narratives into this quite complex and kind of multi-layered narrative?
Oh, we have to thank Ilna for that. That's just great writing on her part. And then it was up to us to find ways of interpreting it. I don't have a beautiful, concise answer for you. I don't know if it exists. But what I will say is when it came to directing a scene that involves rape or sexual assault, there's should be respect around something like that, because so many women have experienced it to some degree. And we had to put it into AVU's world right there. Where is she? What does she have in her hands? How can we show this in a picture format that doesn't lose its value? And I mean, that was the mop in the bucket, the sound of the water, the phallic object. I mean, that's all we could have done to really show the magnitude of pain and the feeling of, what is the word? Just humiliation and powerlessness. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Nini.
No, I feel like you said everything, and it's one of the things we're dealing with right now is gender-based violence as well in South Africa. So I feel like a lot of women go through it. The way it was handled was, like you said, Michelle, it was handled very delicately, and a lot of people get tired of speaking about rape and about sexual violence, but I find it very important to, and the way we did it as well, I think that it was really done beautifully and handled with care.
I'll also just say that, Michelle, give yourself more credit, you know? That was brilliant directing.
No, I will admit, first and foremost, in a lot of scenes, it was a complete ensemble effort thinking, oh my word, how cool would it be? Yera came up with the idea of writing the word swart out on the floor with a mop. I mean, there were so many instances where it was ideas and playing around with them. And that's how you make something good, is you listen.
We've got a comment from Teddy as well, out in no person's land without connection, but he's kind of sending me text. He says, thank you, Eric Strydom. And I think it was based on a comment that you previously made about how Afrikaans people approached you after the show. He says, I got that a lot from Black people too, that AVU from a Black perspective was trying to make it all seem okay and brushing a lot of topics under the carpet. Any kind of commentary on that, Mark, Michelle, Eric?
Maybe
I should call Teddy in. Let me call Teddy in.
Well,
he can ask the question himself. Yeah.
There is a Michelle has also, written extensively about the show. And I'm actually playing around with the idea, if people are interested in it, to make it available on the blog, if they would like to read really an academic analysis of the show, if they want to really go into the history and everything. And she also speaks about the Afrikaners' kind of denial about their own history and why that has happened. So yeah, we can look at publishing that on the blog later on.
Okay, folks, I have Teddy online. Teddy, you can ask your question. Everybody wanted a little bit more context of what you were trying to say.
Here in no technology land, it was a comment.
Okay.
It was directed to the statement that Eric made.
Yeah.
Yes, so I said I got a lot, when I got feedback from a lot of Black people that came to watch the show, it is how we nursed the Afrikaans in the show. How AVU, so from a Black perspective, that's how I would say. How AVU from a Black perspective was nursing the Afrikaans. It was, in some instances, not blunt enough. How it could have been, but it was written brilliantly. That does not take away from it. Michelle, yes, give yourself credit for the directing. It was marvelous. But they mentioned that a lot of issues and topics were brushed under the carpet, or it was made to look very pretty and theatrical.
I think that's true. I think that's true. I think that's definitely something right now in 2020, upon reflection, that needs to be fixed for sure. I think for sure. One of the things that did happen back then in 2016, this is not to defend the idea, just for interest's sake, we knew it would be a majority white Afrikaans audience. And it was something, and this show was something we were trying to reach out to them about because reasons. And for that reason, we had to streel the ego and then put out the truth. But I think in 2020, we're woke now, or attempting to be. I'm way too old to say such things. Where it really should be reflected on. I'm so tired, guys.
Yeah, but I agree with Michelle. It's it comes with perspective. When you when we read, I am very much for it. Like when the 10-year mark hits for the collective, which is in 4 or 5 years, then I'm like, we're doing all of it, everything we've ever done, we're doing it again, and then we restage it, and obviously it'll be recontextualized and also brought up to date. Yeah, and that's the great thing. These stories can evolve and they can become they can move with the time. Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay. Any more questions, Teddy?
No, thank you. I'm enjoying watching this from the middle of nowhere.
Thanks, Teddy.
Bye.
Okay, so in terms of some of the other narratives that we kind of embedded in AVU, what are some of the key ones that you think has come to light in a sense, or kind of seen the light a little bit more since then, Michelle, or have kind of been premonition? Is that the word? Things that you've talked, things that kind of you touched on in AVU that now is kind of something that people really focus on.
Yeah, I'm going to divert this to Eric at this point in time.
Okay.
Just please repeat the question.
We'll go to Nina. We'll go to Nina first, while everybody else is kind of finding their thoughts. Nina, your go.
I'm not ready. I was actually just thinking. I'm not ready. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'm thinking. I took the play. I think I was I've changed. Obviously, my perspective has grown a lot, but I took it very. This is my chance to sort of get into the character. I love delving into the character, and I feel like I like getting to know the character. So my approach on it was more about learning about AVU. So not that the social issues didn't matter to me, but I focused a lot on the character of AVU. So questions like this are a little bit difficult to answer because I'm just reflecting. Yeah.
Mark might have a few kind of suggestions. As Michael always says, we may not have the answers. We may just have further questions,
Are we thinking about the question in a way that has the play led to some kind of social change?
No, I'm saying what narratives within the play, because there's so many narratives. What narratives have emerged as kind of significant narratives now, in terms of what people are kind of really fighting for now? An example would be gender-based violence, I think, which is an enormous issue, particularly now during lockdown in South Africa as well. It's something that has grown and hasn't dissipated, but actually is kind of being, and highlighted is the wrong word, augmented almost. It's kind of, there's a crescendo happening around it. Are there other narratives in there that you also think are relevant, that's emerging now, that was touched on in AVU?
Anyone?
Yeah.
Well, no, I have something. I don't want to take up too much time. I think the fact I said earlier, the show's still relevant, and maybe that's a problem. Why everything she's going through that I've been watching now, I'm like, but all of this shit is still happening in South Africa, and that's a problem. I mean, it would be lovely to one day to watch AVU and to be like, none of this shit happens anymore. Like when you watch Chekhov or something. I'm probably going to get crucified for that, but this doesn't happen anymore. People don't lose their cherry orchards. I don't know. Because no one can afford one. Anyway, but yeah, it would be nice if it could stop happening.
I think Eric had something you wanted to say.
Do you have about half an hour? No,
we got 20 seconds, Eric. You've got 20 seconds.
Okay, I just want to say that all lives matter. Those of dogs too, and animals as well. So, you guys, I just think that the fact that there's so much that's determined by perspective, and it blinds so much. So I just want to, if I can add just that at this stage, there's so many things, and as Ricardo says, there's so many narratives that are still relevant, and the problem is basically because I always want to see change, but I never want to change. It's no one wants really to change themselves. No one really wants to step up to the plate and say, you know what, maybe I was a little bit racist here and I was wrong. And to step up to the plate there and admit, and then say, okay, how can I change this perspective that I have? How can I change this wrong perspective that I have? And I think in a way, what we strive to do, even with AVU, was for people to realize that first, for them to see, maybe my way of seeing things isn't always the right way, and then taking them on a journey from that to actually show that, you don't have the answers and you're not altyd. You're not always right. And it's okay not to be right, but when do you start changing that? When do you start changing the way you think, the way you look at things, in order to really make that difference? And I mean, even Gandhi said, be the change. So, I mean, you have to start with yourself. But we first had to bring it under the awareness of the Afrikaner. Now you get a different problem as well. You're trying to show an awareness or bring an awareness to someone who doesn't want to be aware because they're comfortable. Where I'm, you know, like, if you're trying to bring someone who is a real problematic, you know, racist to a show that's that's marketed as a one-woman show that's being, you know, headlined by a black lady, it's difficult, you know, especially if you want to make them now see the light, if I can put it like that. But I don't know, stop me if I'm wrong here, but that was what we were almost kind of aiming for as well, is kind of, you know, hoodwinking in a sense, and then saying, okay, listen, it's okay, but it's not okay. The reason we bring this up is the fact that you need to know about this. You need to acknowledge this. And if you can't acknowledge that it exists, it'll keep on existing, whether you acknowledge it or not.
Wow. Yes.
Thank you, Eric. Michelle, Nini, Mark, any comments on that? We're running out of time, so we've got, like, maybe I'm going to ask you all to kind of maybe just say a few words before we finish the Q&A for this particular session.
Yeah, I want to thank every person that has been involved in AVU, and I'm shocked that it's still something that's brought up today. I think we are so lucky, and I'm so lucky to have collaborated with all of you to create something so wonderful. And I just want to encourage everyone that hasn't seen it to go check it out.
Thanks, Michelle. Nini?
I just want to thank also everybody who's educating themselves on Black Lives Matter movement as well, who are seeing the passive benefit of being a non-colored person, a non-person of color, who really are getting in there and educating themselves. And I just want to thank those people as well.
Thanks, Nini. Mark?
I think I've said enough, especially about Chekhov. And I'd like to categorically state that sometimes I have mini brain aneurysms and I say things that I don't think through. No, this entire experience was amazing. I've been watching the show. Nini, Eric, your performances are gorgeous. Yeah, and it just makes me, you know, kind of sad and very happy to just think how young we were and how everyone was just fearless. And yeah, we should be more fearless to take on people in their shit more often. Anyway, okay. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. And we have, through the magic of the little things that fly through the air from object to object, we have Teddy again. It's just to also have a final say, because he always has the last say, I know. So I might as well just offer it to him.
No, I really, this was really informative. This was awesome. I love how Mark said, he posed the question that, isn't it disturbing how AVU is still relevant today? I loved that very much. From what I picked up, rewatching it again and reliving the entire moment, it was such a beautiful piece of artistry, and it needs to be done over and over and over again. Increase age restriction, and let's get woke about this. Okay? Go completely Black Lives Matter on this. But it was an awesome catch-up. Awesome seeing everybody. Hi and bye.
Thanks, Teddy.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
This is brilliant. Now I'm in my feelings.
Well, everybody, unless there's a few last comments, thank you so much. Oh, Mark's got a last comment. No, Teddy had the last bit, but I didn't want to Mark has the last bit. Go on.
Let's all go to bed now.
Who's got a comment?
Erik still has a comment, don't you?
Yes, I would just like to say, in case my acting skills were so good, I actually don't like do the whole all lives matter thing. I'm just saying, just before I make a few enemies.
Terrible, get my job out.
Anyways, but I still love you all. I still love everyone. I love everyone, but I'm just saying, like even them other people who don't like everyone, we still love you. You'll get by someday. Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone. And for everybody watching out there, buy a ticket. It's for Stroom 2, Snelstroom, Sluipkyk, Stroom 2. You have 48 hours to watch it once you've purchased a ticket. And for the next 3 or 4 weeks, you can watch it. So do it, support the arts, and support artists. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely worth it. Thank you, Doctor.
Of course, Teddy. I love you. Bye.